Welcome back to Ground Level Theology. We are just starting right in. This is part three. So if you haven't listened to part two or part one, go ahead and pause this, jump over to part one or part two if you accidentally skipped over part two, and get to that before you join us here because we are now getting into the 1770s. We've covered essentially 1700 years of history that are going to be the foundation to this question. We've already played out our hand, so you know exactly what we think. But let's even show it all the more as now we're talking about those people that are signing the Declaration of Independence. Now, Dave, I'm going to go ahead and lay this up to you. Go ahead and take it away, my guy.
All right, here we go, because I haven't talked enough. Now, I love it. I just love history. Well, because I
Mhm.
serve a God who created history and works in history. So for me, history matters because I see how God works throughout time and space. And so I think history is a worthy pursuit and something to be interested in, especially American history, because I'm an American and
Hmm.
I'm proud of it. Anyone that's born here or gets to become a citizen should be proud of it. It should not supersede, your citizenship in heaven. But America is a great country, a lot to work on, but a really great country. And this is
Yeah.
one of the reasons why. One of the reasons why is because we had founding fathers, period. Founding fathers who were Christian, period. And founding fathers who had a wonderful idea of separating church and state, as we talked about earlier, not to completely remove them and where they have no relationship with one another whatsoever, but that way they can actually maintain the integrity of them both. Separation of the state and the church, that way the church could stay the church, and that way the state could stay the state. And one of our founding fathers has written a whole host of documents. A signer of the Declaration of Independence, and he also uh, helped write many of the letters. I think at least, a majority of, I think over 20. I think Alexander Hamilton wrote the most. James
Hmm.
Madison wrote a lot too. But Samuel Adams, in his particular work called The Rights of the Colonists. So this is 1772, 40 years before we even declare independence. A lot of people like the Declaration of Independence is one of our founding documents because it's the formal piece of paper that we declare we want to
Hmm.
be independent. It's Declaration of Independence. That's why it's called that. But anyway, but before that, 4 years before that, we have, between the Westminster Confession of Faith, a precedent throughout all of history, uh, civilly in authority and with the church, undergirding where Samuel Adams, in his Rights of the Colonists in 1772, is beginning to lay out more information, more phrases, lack of a better term, of that will later be used in the Declaration of Independence and in our Constitution for religious freedom and the
Hmm.
relationship between the church and the state. And so, what Samuel Adams states, there's two quotes I want to look at, and if this helps us define what separation of church and state means, because if church and state means no religion in politics, then Samuel Adams is about to do a very bad thing. But what we learn, if Samuel Adams includes religion and religious statements in political conversation, then maybe separation of church and state, then maybe we need to fix what we've wrongly defined it as.
Yeah.
And so one of his wonderful lines is just, and actually here, let me, I got to preface this again as well. The rights of the colonists, all right? There's three subject headings in that document. The first subject heading is the rights of the colonists as men.
Hmm.
The second subject, oh, this is amazing. The second subject heading, and that's the two paragraphs that we're about to look at, are under this heading. The second subject heading says the rights of the colonists as Christians. Like, that's a good title. And then the third one is the rights of the colonists as servants.
Hmm.
like serving the state. So he knows what's up. So
Yeah.
okay, like I just want to tell you all that. So in under that second subject heading of the rights of the colonists as Christians, meaning this is what you deserve. It's a right. Just and true liberty,
Mm,
equal and impartial liberty in matters spiritual and temporal is a thing that all men are clearly entitled to
mm.
by the eternal and immutable laws of God
Wow.
and nature, as well as by the law of nations and all well grounded municipal laws, which must have their foundation in the former. Okay, Mike, you want to break that down? Like, what a statement. You want to break that down for me, buddy?
Man, I'm still taking it.
Sam
Go
Adams.
for it, dude.
It ain't
That's
just a beer, okay? It's not just a beer, everybody. It's a person who understood that if we want just and true liberty, if we want
Mhm.
actual equal and impartial liberty, whether it's a spiritual matter or a temporal matter, it's a thing that all men are entitled to. And why are we entitled to it? Think about this language. We're entitled to these things because of the eternal and immutable laws of God and nature. Mike, what does eternal mean?
Always
Yeah, what does
simply
immutable? Yeah, what does immutable mean?
not mutable.
Yeah, like unchanging, right?
Yeah.
Not able to change. And so he's saying we have a right as Christians, because that's subject heading, to just and true liberty, equal and impartial liberty in spiritual and temporal matters. We're entitled to it clearly. Why? Because of God's eternal, always ongoing, unchanging laws and the laws of nature. Then he brings up the law of nations, like the state, as well as well grounded municipal laws. So, like, we talk about like lawful civil authority. However, divine institution, here we go, but which must have the foundation in the former.
Mm.
And so, if you want to have a well grounded municipal law, if you want to look at the laws of the nations, that's fine, but they must be in submission to the eternal and immutable laws of God and nature.
It's like as
Like,
I'm
wow.
reading that and just taking it all in, it's like, man, people just don't write the way like
Oh, no.
people don't
Heck
write
no.
that way anymore. It's like it's so there's so much depth to this one statement. It's quite incredible to read. And then to think that's like as beautifully written as this is, we're still having to justify
Hmm.
our position as to what the separation of church and state really means.
Yes.
And here we are. We're going over the primary resources, folks. We're giving you the words that they wrote down. We're not giving you ours, which is why this is taking so long. We were giving you a history of everything that's being said and how it's essentially the foundation to how we answer this, and we're still going. And this is one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Even as you were reading this, I was thinking the immutable laws of God and his nature. The next statement, that we'll read through, I'm also thinking to as well. But it's like, man, that comes through in our founding documents of it, God-given inalienable rights.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
theme. It's a
Hmm.
theme when it comes to our founding fathers. It's a theme when it comes to our founding documents, and it's a theme when it comes to how we set up our
Yeah.
uh, our government. It's
It is.
incredible to read.
It is, like we say, our founding fathers. This is foundational for them. Like, we see what's going on right now because we're trying to have a government without God.
Yeah.
And they're trying to say it's like we only have government because of God. Like do you get do you
Yeah.
understand? Like you just set yourself up for failure because you tried to take the one that made the equation out of the equation.
Right.
And it's beautiful, like, which is why even the second phrase from this document, where he can say even the right of freedom itself, like the idea of being free and actually having freedom, is a gift of God Almighty. This is the third
Mm,
page of that document. It is not in the power. Think about George Whitefield, right? You can be
yeah.
saved. It's not one person that tells you, oh, you're actually saved, you give enough money, you show enough time, blah, blah, blah. No, it is not in the power of man to alienate this gift of freedom and voluntarily become a slave.
Wow.
Like
And
you don't you
voluntarily become a slave.
like
I'm
oh
just thinking of what we did in the last part there at the very end.
oh
Benjamin
yeah.
Franklin's, like I said, they're all sharing this sentiment. It's a theme. Why would you not be a slave? Where does this idea of slavery coming from other than, yes, it is present at the time, but this idea of slavery has also a theological notion that we are not to be like Israel in Egypt. We are like to be Israel following God out of
Mm,
Egypt. They are taking what is called liberation theology, the idea that God is going to liberate them, and they're understanding that the British and their overtaxation and their corruption of the church in the government with the Church of England and all that stuff, they are seeing all of this and they're saying, if we are to abide by those oppressive, if we are to abide by those oppressive and unjustified and non-religious views, then we are essentially becoming slaves. Well,
yeah,
to whoever you
yeah.
want to attribute that to, because we could say Satan or we could say other things, but you're essentially making yourself out a slave, and so yeah, this it's just it's a great statement by Samuel Adams.
Mm. And like, and you and I, we this is almost like an aside, but we should joke around, like, we like a lot of people have that inner rebel at heart, like they're rebels at heart,
Hmm.
and like we learn, like with the fall of man, you know, we now rebel against God, and it's like, and until we are brought into a right relationship with Him, we're in that state of rebellion. And you and I both, because we like being rebels, we used to joke around, like, thankfully, when you come to Christ, you don't have to stop being a rebel. It's just what you rebel against changes.
Yeah,
And so now, instead of rebelling against the Lord anymore, we now rebel against sin. We rebel against the world and its fallen teachings and practices. And so
yeah,
what's actually the irony here, and like, and what we're kind of like the wording that we're getting at, is, resistance to tyrants is obedience to God, in that we're learning that, hey, we are free in Christ.
hmm,
And we are now free to rebel
yeah,
in a way. And so we're not just like free from those who we want to rebel against, and or rightfully rebel against, but we have the freedom to rebel against them. By all means, like if you see someone that is, yeah, that's one reason why someone might leave a particular church, because a
yeah,
heresy is being taught. That's a reason why someone might be like, you know what, I need to leave this job. Maybe I don't vote for that candidate. Like whatever it is, because it's like we have the freedom to rebel against things that we should rebel against, unjust
yeah,
laws and unjust people. Uh, we all make mistakes, grain of salt. But like when you can tell when someone's explicitly condoning something that the Bible explicitly does not condone.
oh
So,
yeah, it's baked into the cake. I mean, these people know they're coming out of an unjust government that's overtaken, it's
right.
overstepped, and they want that pure, true religion. They want to be able to practice it in freedom, and they want to establish something that won't be taken advantage of. One of the things that, as they're getting ready to essentially rebel, as they're going through all of this and stuff, they're thinking, hey, there may be a time when people in our own history, coming from
Right.
our own government, will need to do the same. We're going to bake it into the cake so that they don't feel like they're their conscience is going against them because we are giving them the mandate even. We are commanding them that if things go too far, they are to protest. They are to disobey. They are
Mm,
to consciously do this. Why? For the Lord has given that to us. This is
mm,
they baked it into the cake. We are allowed to protest. We are allowed to congregate together to express our dissatisfaction with the government. All of this stuff is because they are doing that and they want to make sure that we can too. And
mm,
so, like I said, a lot of their situation is playing out in what they're thinking about with the government. And so too is their idea that God has given us inalienable rights. The government is subject to God. The church is allowed to flourish in however it wants, and in fact the church is informing these founding fathers views. They are informing how the government should be constructed, which I'm sort of phrasing it in this way to kind of go back to separation of church and state. Doesn't mean get the church out of the state. Here we are, perfect example. The church is informing how we even made the state.
yep, exactly.
And
Which, yeah, man,
yeah,
that's
and here it is. Samuel Adams, 1772, 4 years before the Declaration of Independence, has not yet been written. There's still some time. There's still some philosophy to cover, but it's already in there. But now moving to the Declaration of Independence
right.
in 1776, we can kind of read this. It says, "We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America." I'm sorry, that's beautiful in that how far we've come just to get to that, right?
Yeah,
United States of America is now a
13
new
colonies.
idea. It's just crazy. So the United States of America in general, Congress assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world
I love it.
for the rectitude of our intentions. And now it's going to go on with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence.
Well, that is a reformed statement right there, if I ever read one.
The
Gosh,
supreme judge
beautiful.
of the world and the
Mm,
supreme king who is forming and making things happen, we rely on his protection.
oh, like, you have like, okay, like you have to remember, like, part of like you have some people are like, why did America even have a Revolutionary War? Shouldn't they have just submitted to England? You submit to your governing authorities, right? And we've already talked about it, and we've laid it out in the confession
Mm-hmm.
that yes, you submit to your authorities when they are being lawful. Ben Franklin wanted to write on that coin, inscribe on that coin what he wanted to inscribe on that coin because they were not like, if England had been doing their job, I don't know if there would have been a Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
You're right. But because they weren't doing their job, because the government had overstepped, and in this case, specifically religious freedom, that's one of the major reasons why they even fled England on the Mayflower to begin with, seeking religious freedom. And so the last, like you talked about this, the last thing they want is when they come to this new place is to get here what they fled over there. And so
Yeah.
they have to declare independence. It's almost like, you have to cut off whatever causes you to sin in life. It's like we need to cut off ourselves from like these pagan things.
Yeah.
Like we are in submission to the supreme judge of the world, not a king, not the queen's whatever. Okay? We rely on the protection of divine providence. We rely on God. We rely
Mm-hmm.
on the Lord. He is the judge of the world. Like I'm not going to submit to any person that forgets who he is and who he's supposed to be.
Yeah. The
You have people
language
that, yeah, yeah,
appealing to the supreme judge of the
Right?
world, have
Oh,
a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. What preacher are we quoting right now? We're not. This is the Declaration of Independence, 1776. It is what is defining us as a nation. It is
yes.
the founding document.
It's the first sentence, Mike. I pulled it out because it's the first sentence. They
Like,
literally are. Imagine telling
but get
England,
but get
this is
church
why we're,
separated from
yeah.
state, right? Let's get
Oh,
it away.
right,
Let's get
yeah.
it out of here.
No. Meanwhile, the very first sentence of a formal document telling England, telling the king, this is why we're leaving you. This
Oh,
is why. Like they literally base their reason for declaring independence on the reality, the certainty of God, like the existence of God, literally, we therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, what appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions. Like, in America, we think about in America, we have these different court systems, the level of justice, right? Where you have like the
yeah.
local courts, and then you have a certain judicial, like to the point where you get to like federal courts, like even the Supreme Court, right? And that's when it's like, we need you to rectify this law. Who are they making an appeal to? This is a cosmic atrocity, Mike.
Yeah.
We are declaring independence. King of England, we are declaring to the supreme judge, the
Yeah.
most high God of the judge of the world.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, for the rectitude of our intentions with a firm reliance that, like, literally they're like essentially saying, and we're going to be protected by his providence because we're the ones in the right and you're in the wrong. We need justice and you don't.
And you know what?
Ooh,
We were.
yes.
We won.
I know. Doesn't that give you chills?
The
Like, let's
it's
go.
it's so crazy to think
Farmers
too
and
because
pastors
yeah,
won.
farmers going up against
The
the
best net.
world power.
Poetic justice. It's oh, and again, not trying to read stuff. Why? And even like their like covenant theology. Like these are Presbyterians, right? They're like, you're not trying to label things. We're like, yeah, it's like Joshua going. It's like underdog Israel taking on the Philistines.
Yeah,
Like you don't want to read into it. And so I'm not trying to be like it's a 1-to-1. But like
but
that's
it's a
the
good
just are
illustration
beating.
of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I have, well, you see the notes too. Like I have one little thing of separation of church and state. A lot of people, most people don't, well, even New Jersey, New, I have jokes about New Jersey. It's, smaller state, East Coast. A lot of people forget about it, or they just think of like Jersey Shore and like the accents. Forget about it.
That's true.
Uh,
Yeah.
but here, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence from the state of New Jersey is a Presbyterian minister, John Witherspoon.
Hmm.
Actually, Professor Kevin DeYoung, Dr. DeYoung, he did his PhD on John Witherspoon. And,
Wow.
yeah, and I forget the name of the PhD, but it's wonderful. You can look it up. You just, Dr. DeYoung, PhD dissertation. But the idea of like uh, separation of church and state. Why is a pastor signing our founding document?
Because who else than a Presbyterian minister to sign the founding documents?
Because we're now getting a little philosophical. Why is he signing this document? There's a couple other pastors around. Like I don't. He might have also,
Hmm.
he owned land or something. I don't know all the ins and outs of it that gave him the in. However, if he's a good man of God, which means he bases his decisions off of his faith, and he doesn't just choose anything willy nilly, as we would say,
Yeah.
then he is signing this document based on his convictions, specifically Christian convictions. separation of church and state, and yet here we are with a guy that is making a political statement,
Yeah.
uh, making a choice based on his beliefs that impact, well, the trajectory of the whole nation. Like,
Probably one of the most political documents to ever exist.
yeah,
Signed by a Presbyterian minister.
and he was one of lots,
Yeah.
but like, but a
I mean,
pastor
I
is
just think
signing
like
this.
if George Whitfield was alive, I
Mm,
wonder if if his name would also be on that document, you know? It's like
100%.
because I
We're doing
mean,
God's will.
people really miss how big of an impact, especially for that time, these preachers and ministers were to the people around them, including our founding fathers. They really miss that, which is why we're kind of bringing this out now. It's like, listen to the language of George Whitfield. Listen to the language of the founding fathers. They're repeating it. They're learning it from their preachers. I can
Mm.
imagine John Witherspoon is just pouring into these founders, that he's such a major player in his community that yes, absolutely he ends up being one of the people to sign one of the most important documents that we have to date.
Like, speechless. Like, it's amazing. But like we got plenty more to go. Like we're like, wait, the Declaration of Independence didn't settle it all. It's like, oh, trust me. That what does it mean when the Declaration of Independence for this conversation is actually just the tip of the iceberg? All right,
Right?
here we go. Like we mean business, y'all. You guys buckled up, and we're not all that in a bag of chips, but we try to give you our best. All right,
Right.
1783, Mike. What happened? We're gonna I'll expound, but like what happened in 1783? This is almost 10 years after we declared independence.
Hmm.
What's happened?
We got the Treaty of Paris going on.
Okay, it's the definitive treaty of peace, better known as the Treaty of Paris, because it's with the French. 1783. Okay, this is after a war. Wars stink. Wars are detrimental. They take time, resources, people, money. Think about it, Mike. We don't like wars with established governments. Okay? Like, think about how much money is spent.
Yeah.
It's like I don't like remember like we've done like how much like an F like 14 jet costs. Like that's like one
Oh,
like plane
I think we're
and
talking
millions
about sending
billions.
what, like six billion or $6 trillion to Israel right now, and
Yeah.
how many to Ukraine as well. It's like, oh, we just vomit money when
And
it comes
so
to war.
right. And so I'm thinking like, how long has the United States of America been established at this point? Uh, like
7 years, if I do my math correctly.
yeah, yeah, like not even 10 years. And like
Yeah.
we're talking like imagine you're like, "Hey, we're going to start a new government." And then the first day on the job is going to war to make sure your government stays a government.
Yep.
And so that's what happens. And all the repercussions of that, and you have to remember like so many things, you on both sides, you're trying to work with colonization of working with indigenous people groups that are there, trying to have positive relationships, but also knowing that there's also still men that might have, all mankind is fallen. And so there's fallenness on both sides to certain degrees. And then meanwhile, on the other side of you is a whole bunch of water. And so how do you trade? How do you build an economy for a new government, if you will? And so what was happening is even though we won the war, the Britain they were sore losers. And so
Right.
to be honest, they were sinking our trade vessels,
Hmm.
and they were preventing us from having economy, having importing and exporting. And so what happened? We called it the Treaty of Peace or Treaty of Paris, 1783, and it's like, hey, we need to reestablish trade routes.
Hmm.
And like we won, so give us our independence. Otherwise, we're gonna have to go like you go to war again.
Yeah.
If you don't leave us alone, I guess we still have a problem. And so, but I
Maybe you didn't hear it right the
the
first
first
time,
time,
buddy.
buddy, boy, yeah, this country ain't big enough for the two of us. Uh,
Right.
and what I really want to hit on though is just the heading.
Okay.
The heading of this peace treaty, and you know how headings work. We've written lots of
Hmm.
papers. It sets the tone. It gives the reader a trajectory, a basis on like, hey, this is kind of the summarization of the content that we're about to expound. The heading of this treaty, no, it's almost like a covenant. This treaty, the heading is in the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity. Like, oh my
That's
God.
Islam, right?
Like, no,
That's Buddhism. That's
like how like what if a
that's
government
deism.
no, like what if yeah, what if every government document was like, all right, House Bill 147 in the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity,
It's
uh
just so funny because
you
it
need to
couldn't be
have
more
stop signs.
specific.
Like,
It's like Christianity. We're talking
like
about Christ.
yeah. Like hello. Like gosh, I mean,
Oh
like
my goodness.
you have I'm not even trying to be funny. Like you have the explicit term Trinity in a political document before it's in the Bible. Like we have the concept in the Bible, but the word is actually in a political document.
Yeah.
Like, and it's in print, and they can't white it out. It is a historical document.
Yep.
That's their heading. And then even at the end, when they're making this appeal to who's Prince George III at the time, is that it having again this language of divine providence, it having pleased the divine providence
Mm.
to dispose the hearts of the most serene and this is a little sappy, serene and potent Prince George III by the grace of God.
That's
Right. Well, and so for me,
kissing
like it
that
definitely
butt.
fits with my understanding of election and all that, where it's like,
Mm.
hey, divine providence. We pray that divine providence will shape your heart, conform your will
Yeah.
to be serene and potent and kind to us. Essentially, receive that God will make you want to show us favor, kind of like what he did with Pharaoh to a degree, by the grace of God.
Or like, may you, may God who put you in your position, may you
Yes.
serve like Cyrus and
Yes.
benefit us and benefact us.
Like well said. It's like remember, it's him who put you there, and he might have put you there just for moments like this, where you can show mercy and do the right thing.
Hmm.
Be lawful. So it's beautiful. And but let's talk. That's like an interesting treaty. I definitely wanted to hit on the heading. Like that's just that the heading is in there, in a real political document. But even our first president, Mike, we love inaugural addresses. This is the first ever inaugural address because George Washington is the first president ever, and this is 1789. So this is 13 years after our Declaration of Independence, and there's so much context, right? 13
Hmm.
years after the Declaration of Independence, first president is the general of the army that helped us win the war on independence. So I really like that. Like, who better to be America's first president than the guy that kind of was on the front lines helping us like do that?
Yeah.
And so, like, what does he say in his first inaugural address in 1789?
And we're still here. This is like what, 13 years later now?
Yeah,
So
13.
that's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Wow. Okay. So we're only 13 years since the Declaration of Independence, and I'll go ahead and read it. It says, such being the impressions under which I have, in obedience to the public summons, repaired to the present station, it would be peculiarly improper to omit in the first official act of my fervent supplications to that almighty being who rules over the universe, who presides in the council of nations,
Mm.
and whose providential aids can supply every human defect, that his benediction may consecrate to the liberties and happiness of the people of the United States, a government instituted by themselves for these essential purposes, and may enable every instrument employed in its administration to execute with success the functions allotted to his charge. In tendering this homage to the great author of every public and private good, I assure myself that it expresses your sentiments, not less than my own, nor those of my fellow citizens at large less than either. No people can be bound to acknowledge and adore the invisible hand which conducts the affairs of men more than those of the United States. Whoo!
Like Mike, when I read
Wow.
oh gosh, I would love to hear an inaugural address like
That is,
this again.
oh man. Yeah,
Like
we don't have them like we used to do we?
like Mike, like they don't make them like they used. Yeah, dude. Like I'm speechless. Like this is beautiful. This is so beautiful. This is our first president giving credit where credit is due.
Oh man.
Recognize, like I mean, he recognizes, like I mean, he acknowledges the audacity that it would be peculiarly improper. It would be improper of me to omit, to forget in this first official act of my fervent supplications. I mean, it would be wrong of me in my first act as the president of the United States
Mhm.
to forget about why I'm here in the first place. That the Almighty Being who rules over the universe presides in the councils of nations. His providential aids supply every human defect, that his benediction may consecrate to the liberties and happiness of the people of the United States a government
Yep.
instituted by themselves for these. I mean, he's like, God gave us the government. He gave us this government. And so it would be so wrong of me to forget like why I'm here. Like it's because of him. It's the
Yep.
almighty being who rules over the universe that I'm here in the first place, that we even have a government here in the first place. All these things are to be functions allotted to his charge.
Yep.
That way, when they give homage to the great author in every public and private good, he can say, I assure myself that it expresses your sentiments, not less than my own. He's speaking on behalf of the nation. Like, this isn't just my
Yeah.
conviction. I know that you feel this way too. Not nor those of my fellow citizens at large, less than either. No people can be like, and then he's like trying to say, like, if any other country is going to get this principle and get this right and appreciate what I'm saying about God's providence,
Mhm.
wow, like no people can be bound, he says, like you're obligated. No other people can be bound to acknowledge and adore. He says adore, Mike.
That's
I
probably one
mean,
of the things that popped out to me the most.
adore the invisible hand, the sovereign hand of God, which conducts the affairs of men more than those of the United States. Meaning, if no, like no other, like the separation of church and state, it's like if any other country, if any country is going to get it right about what separation of church and state's actually supposed to mean, how we got the country that we do, how we have the documents that we do, why you have the
Hmm.
rights that you do. It's because of the God that you're trying to take out of the whole thing. It's like,
Like, how do you take out God from government when, by George Washington's own admission, is the invisible hand which directs the very people that make up the United States?
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like if you don't want God in government, then like you wouldn't be in government because
Let me
God put you
emphasize
there.
this all the more because we're a little bit more democratic than our previous government that we just left. The
Hmm.
invisible hand which conducts the affairs of men, the one that controls what the men do, the one that controls what the people do, and these people are the people that build the government and keep it under control. We the people.
Hmm. Like who? Yeah, who
The
governs
invisible
the ungoverned?
hand that
Yeah.
conducts we the people. You
Yes.
can't get it out.
No,
I'm sorry.
you can't. No, and that's probably we're about. I want to jump on to. We also have the Bill of Rights, right?
Yeah,
Which is an amendment to the original Constitution, and that's probably of all the things. It's interesting. Of all the things in our Constitution, it's actually the preamble that's probably the most profound
yeah,
and makes that document unlike any other document. The preamble, where it starts with what? We, the people.
yep,
It's we're in charge, and it's that also reflects church government, where it's the people of God that elect their
yeah.
elders and their deacons, and then they submit to the authority of the elders and deacons as elected officials to represent them, you know, to Christ and to the world and all that. But the Bill of Rights, do you love how we looked at the Declaration of Independence, but we're not even like basing this whole argument just on that?
Yeah,
And then even like the Constitution, it's like, hey, a lot of people know the First Amendment, and it's like, wait, they're not even basing their argument on the First Amendment. It's like that's like
no,
a foot.
we all know it.
What what is that? What is that like, folks that are listening? I'm trying to show you like the impact that this is such the idea of separation of church and state and what it was really supposed to be is actually so much deeper and so much greater that it's actually not the argument shouldn't be based on the First Amendment, but actually the
Yeah,
First Amendment really only serves as a footnote in comparison in the whole scheme of the
yeah.
concept.
Our our position is so well founded that it has
Mm,
now taken us roughly 3 hours and we're still going.
yeah.
I mean, there's so much material here. There's so much that is grounding the idea that God is in the government, right? He's placed it there, that we as a people ought to be engaging in our government, and that, uh, I mean, essentially that we ought to be engaging in our government as Christians, and that God has put that government into place. The entire thing is theological.
Hmm. Like and so the reason why it's an amendment is because it wasn't in the original document. It was
Hmm.
added. I'd argue like it's not that I'd argue that it's not that they forgot something, but that it might have been something that they took as a given, something that they took for granted, that people saw like, hey, maybe if we're not explicit about it, people can forget what we really mean. And we see that all the time, right? People take things for granted, and then when you don't say something, people take more liberty than they should, or they find loopholes, and it's like, you know what? I know what we all know by this, but let's be abundantly clear what we actually mean by
And
this. It's like,
that sort of even like creates a even better argument for us, because right, if it was in the original document, we might say, well, that was what they originally thought, but later they regretted that. No, 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 no. they're amending this. This is 1789. And we're going
Right.
to see that they've been keeping that theme. They've been keeping that mentality all this time. And in fact, this amendment is only further solidifying our position.
Correct. It's amazing. And and if do you want to read it, I'll read. I love read. I mean,
Oh, go
go ahead.
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were going to
It's
read it.
just Article the third, and so it's addressing like, hey, this is an amendment to the third article of the Constitution. There's several articles in the Constitution, and so in regards to the third article, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. To make just clarification,
Yeah,
when it says no law respecting an establishment, it's not saying, oh, they can make a law that's disrespecting. It's not like respect versus disrespect. It really means like in regards to
or concerning. Yeah,
or concerning. So it's like Congress shall make no law concerning an establishment of religion.
yeah. Which, historically, here we are
Yep,
talking about it
we
again
are.
all this time. We're not here to make a theocracy here, right?
Right.
That's
We're
not
not
what we're
trying to have another
doing.
pope situation. Exactly.
Exactly.
And on the inverse, though, right? The next line, we don't want like a Gestapo over here.
Yeah.
Or, like, here's the or no law concerning an establishment of religion, also no law prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Meaning, you
Hmm.
can't make a law saying you're not allowed to exercise your religion.
Yep.
Like, oh, I love it.
Which,
I mean,
which is,
hey, hey,
we talked
hey.
about this
Is
numerous
this a
times,
first,
but
you know, yeah, is this a um, freedom of speech issue? Like, that's why
yeah.
that comes up.
But also, like, I mean, we brought this up multiple times, but I mean, this really is something that's been coming up in kind of undergirding that, or prohibiting the free exercise of thereof. You know, John MacArthur during the COVID thing,
Constitution.
our governor was doing that. And here we are. That's why it was put in place. That was an
Mm-hmm.
overreach by our government. And so,
And well, yeah, well, in this, what are the Bill of Rights, right? They also pertain to the individual. It's not
mhm,
just like a corporate where like America has the right to the freedom of speech. It's like, no, by being a citizen, you have this right.
yeah.
Like, so it's on the individual level.
And I think what makes this part of the Bill of Rights, this amendment, so awesome, especially with what we just read, or the prohibiting the free exercise thereof, is sort of the context that it's situated next to. And I'm going to go ahead and
Mm-hmm.
read this part of the statement. I'm sorry, I'm jumping
Sure.
in here.
No, you're good.
So let's take this phrase in context of what I'm about to say, and I'm just going to be reading it, but I'm just letting you know where it's couched in. So, not the prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Within all of that, as fundamental as the rights of being able to have speech, to have press, to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government, as fundamental as those rights are, is also the free exercise of our religion. Whoa.
Mm.
And so we're over here talking about, free speech, all this other stuff. Free
Mm. Why
speech
did, yeah.
is as fundamental as this, according to the Bill of Rights that
Or
was
yeah.
amended in
Sorry.
1789. No, you're good. You're good.
No,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
just, I just don't, I didn't want to cut you off. I'm passionate. Like, or like, can we just, like, I mean, they're obviously addressing, like, they want the people to have what they didn't have in England. There was problems because they could, try to give a grievance to the king, and they're lucky if it was read or acknowledged. They didn't have,
Right.
you know, what they like. But like, if you want to talk about separation of church and state, why is religion brought up at all in this amendment?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't that seem kind of out of left field? Like, oh, freedom of speech, I love it. Well, the printing press, yeah, that's awesome. Peacefully assemble, well, churches assemble, but that could also mean anything. You're assembling in a park, you're assembling to have a parade, you know what I mean? Peacefully assemble. And then to be able to, like, if you have a problem with the government, being able to share your grievances.
Mhm.
Great. Why is religion brought up? Like, people don't like ask
Yeah.
that question. Like out of nowhere, you just say, "Oh, by the way, embedded in all that is the idea that I also don't want you to make a law saying that you have to have a certain religion in America and that or that you can't have a religion in America and allow them to be able to exercise that religion."
Yeah.
And this is another example where people separation of church and state where you know they were smart. They cared so much about religious freedom that they were even willing, for the sake of being able to preserve their Christian faith, allow for the potential of other faiths if it meant they got to keep theirs. Because they didn't say only
Yeah.
Christian religion, they didn't say only true religion, but it's
Yeah.
like that wisdom. If we just allow all religion, we'll be under that blanket and we'll
Yeah.
be okay.
And just sort of to bring it back to what I was sort of cooking something here, and now we got to take it out of the oven. It's like it's been
Right.
baking all this time. Remember when I said George Whitfield would plant the seed that would essentially be the freedom for religion here. No one has the right to tell me what I'm supposed to believe about God and how I feel about God. That was going to be the essential seed for individual religion, individual views on religion. That was the seed that would allow the freedom for religion. It was from George Whitfield and what he was preaching. And just as you're saying, yes, it protected because they took that idea, they ran with it, and they brought it into the oak tree that it ended up standing as. No one has the right to critique you or tell you you can't worship that, even if it's not
Mm,
Christianity. No one has the right to tell you what you believe in God. And that coming from the foundation of George Whitfield finally blooms to this concept, and it's
mm,
religious freedom. And so we see this is why it's important to understand the history back here. So when we get over to these documents, you're seeing it bloom, you're seeing it blossom, and you're seeing where that seed was that was planted and watered. Because when we finally get here, we're not going to write it off as, oh, it was just their personal conviction. No, this has been a conviction that's been coming through centuries and is now blooming
mm.
before our face.
Wow. And and well, and the irony as well. And I just want to say this one thing of
Mm,
so many people want to separate the separation of freedom of religion, but I in the state I want freedom from religion, and we definitely don't want Christianity. We got things like no more Pledge of Allegiance. We want to take God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. We want to say no longer have "In God We Trust" on our money. We take prayer out of public schools, and the irony of it is like you don't like Christianity. You want to take Christianity out of government, out of politics, and it was the Christians' idea to have religious freedom. Do Muslim Mike, like just real quick, rhetorical question, but you do Muslims promote religious freedom?
Absolutely, they do. Wait, are you talking about like Sharia
like
law?
yeah, do Muslims
Oh, no,
promote
no, no, no.
religious
See,
freedom?
I need to sort of I need to sort of redeem myself. I was thinking
You're good.
Muslims in America who are
Right,
fighting
yeah.
for against the
Sure.
people that are
Of
trying to
course.
relegate them.
Sorry.
No.
I'm
But
thinking
yes,
like
with Sharia law in the Middle East, and if
true
they're
devout
practicing the way that they want, no, absolutely no religious diversity. You're either Muslim or you're dead.
right, like an Orthodox Muslim, a Muslim that actually knows his Quran,
Hmm. Yeah.
is like not going to support religious freedom. Muslim or
Yeah.
die, like you said. Do uh, Buddhists support religious freedom?
I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
it's
honest.
yes. Yeah, it's yes and no.
Yeah, I don't think they even believe what they believe.
Well, see, and that's the ambiguity there, which is why
Yeah.
I can say no. Because, like, one of those things where if you don't affirm one way, you end up affirming another way. Or even if choosing not to decide, you've made a choice kind of deal.
Mm,
Where if you don't come out explicitly about what something is, well, then, you're still telling us what it isn't, or, so they're not
okay.
outright saying, like, yeah, you can be whatever religion you want to be. It's like, mm, well, part of me is being a Buddhist, I'm supposed to be kind and peaceful, and I guess I can allow it. But I know I really wouldn't want you to be anything other than a Buddhist, though.
Yeah.
So what do you deal with that? So anyway, what I'm trying to say, but what religion, if you're going to name it a religion, like because I like relationship, you know what I mean? What religion promotes religious freedom? Who has
Christians.
like we want religious freedom? And it's amazing that the people that wanted religious freedom are Christians. And what did they want religious freedom from? It wasn't from like Muslims. It wasn't from like another religion that was oppressing them. It was a wrong form of Christianity that was
Hmm.
oppressing them. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't even like, oh, I'm coming out of a Muslim nation and I want Christianity. It was like, no, you have made the state and Christian and the church to be something it was never they were never supposed to be, and we want to literally reform,
Yeah.
do what we're supposed to do, which is amazing. It's just amazing.
Yeah. We have the hard task here because we are now at 56. We have the hard task of trying to cover George Washington's
I mean,
farewell address in about 10 minutes.
I can do it. I mean, I think we should close this with the way George closed his thing. You
Sounds
know,
good.
um, 1796, 20 years later,
Yep.
after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and we're talking in 1796, which is I mean, 8 years. We're talking
Hmm.
about, 2 year, 2 4-year terms. Look at them obeying their constitution. Uh, and I just, so we read his inaugural address, like his first one. This is him. That was him stepping into office. And then you can imagine him 8 years later, kind of looking at everything the nation's become, the last 8 years of his presidency, and what does he have to say as an old man after everything he's been through? Uh, the first statement: observe good faith, and it's not like have a good faith judgment, like I'm showing you good faith. It's actually deeper than that. I was reading a commentary on it. Observe good faith, meaning I have a good faith, good convictions, good religious morals and foundations. Observe good faith and justice towards all nations. There's an element of favor, but cultivate peace and harmony with all. Religion and morality enjoin this conduct. And can it be that good policy does not equally enjoin it? And it's like it's a great point where he's essentially saying, like, if you want me, I look back on like what it means, like how we're going to treat other nations, how we treat other people, how we're going to cultivate peace and harmony with all people. How am I going to do that?
Yeah.
Religion and morality
And once again, I
enjoin this
just want to
conduct.
include here
Mhm.
religion. We're not talking about Islam. We're not talking about Buddhism. We're not talking about
Right.
other stuff. Religion is primarily referring to Christianity.
Yep.
And on top of this, I mean I said this in the Halloween episode, but we don't have much religious diversity here. Primarily at this point in time, we're essentially one denomination of Christianity. There isn't a lot of denominations that are around at this time. You're pretty much one. There's probably one or two people or so that are from different uh, denominations, But by and large, right now, the United States is pretty monolithic regarding its religion. And so
Hmm.
it's talking about religion in the form of Christianity, but it's also going to allow for the opening of other religions and how this can be interpreted. And so, it's quite beautiful the way it's written.
Exactly. But he doesn't, and he doesn't stop there. We have, you know, the irony. He's not doing a very good job separating church from state. With all this religious language. Uh, a little later in the same address, he says, though it's amazing, like he's like reflecting on his how he did. Though in reviewing the incidents of my administration, I'm unconscious of intentional error. Meaning, like if I made a mistake, it was never on purpose. Um, I am nevertheless too sensible of my defects not to think it probable that I may have committed many errors. So he's acknowledging, I never did it on purpose, but I also know myself well enough that I probably did at some point. Whatever they may be, though, whatever they may be, I fervently beseech the Almighty to avert or mitigate the evils to which they may tend. It's
Man.
I say all this because I just finished a sermon series on the book of Nehemiah. In Nehemiah chapter 13, three times Nehemiah asks the Lord, as he was the governor of the people during that time, to remember the things that he did. The last line of the book, remember me, O my God, for my good. That I did all these things for the people. I helped build the wall. I helped build the church. I was trying to reorient them back into covenant faithfulness with you. I wasn't perfect, but I did all these things. Please remember them for my good. And I don't know if George Washington is like, oh yeah, I'm being like Nehemiah. But it's interesting that tone, that attitude of like, I know I'm not perfect. I didn't do anything wrong on purpose, but I know myself that I probably did do something. But if I did, whatever it may be, I pray that the Almighty would take those evils to either avert them or mitigate them, essentially change them, make them stop, get rid
Yeah.
of them. That way, I didn't ruin anything that he wanted to establish.
Yeah.
Like a president, like the president is talking he's talking like a man of God.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
he could be a preacher. I
like, yes,
I
yes.
don't think I've made any errors, at least not to my knowledge. I'm sure
I probably
that
did
I
though.
probably did a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, we can all agree with that statement. And I just love the passion behind this. Whatever those errors might have been, I fervently beseech the Almighty to correct those evils.
Mm. And
Wow.
well, because you reflect on his inaugural address,
Yeah.
recognizing that it's God who put me here, the
Yeah.
invisible hand, it's divine providence, it's the Almighty One. And then he acknowledges, like, you put me here, and it's like almost saying, like, I pray that I did everything you needed me to do.
Like
And, and that's like,
guys,
well,
let me just drop in here like a cannonball.
yeah, you
Guys,
got it.
we are not reading George Washington's diary. We
No,
are reading our first president's, after 8 years of service, his last inaugural address.
a farewell address. This is like his last day,
Yeah,
like before he has to give it over to the second
yeah, sorry,
president.
his farewell
No, you're
address.
good.
This is not his diary. This is
Last
his
statement.
farewell address as the President of the United States of America. And he
Hmm.
is just laying it on thick
Yeah, he is.
on the
Uh,
Lord. Don't tell me
100%.
separation of church and state, guys. Don't tell
Well,
me that.
yeah. Well, and then it's like, and then I gotta read. I, I have to read it. I just want to please make me read it.
Yes.
This last line. I mean, and this is the last line of the address. And what a
Mhm.
way to close it out. It started with God and it is going to end with God. after 45 years of my life, that's a long time,
Yeah.
dedicated to its service, meaning my whole life has been devoted to this country. Like I was there fighting for its independence. I was here when the Declaration of Independence was signed. I was here with our Constitution. I've served as your president for 8 years. 45 years of my life dedicated to its service with an upright zeal. The faults of incompetent abilities will be consigned to oblivion, as myself must soon be to the mansions of rest.
Hmm.
Like mansions of rest? Like
Yeah.
he understands. He's not outright saying like, Christ is going to forgive me of all my shortcomings. But he understands like this my whole life, everything I've done. I have all the faults of my incompetent abilities, they're going to be consigned to oblivion. They're going to be cast away, they're going to be done away with, or they're going to be redeemed. The Lord's going to right all my wrongs if I've done them. And I will be cast not to oblivion, but he knows he's going to die soon. I think
Yeah.
I myself must soon be to the mansions of rest. Do you
And you
think
can
do
just
you think he believes he's going to heaven?
you can just hear, I am going away to prepare some mansions for you, right?
Yeah,
Jesus is
like
essentially saying, I'm going to prepare a place for you. And George
enter
Washington
my
here
rest.
in,
Yeah.
yeah, I am going to my Lord, to the place that he has prepared for me, to the mansions of rest that he has prepared for me. I will be going
Uh,
to him. Wow.
I don't like, dude, like this is our first president, and so either he is a significant violator
Yeah.
of what separation of church and state is, or we messed up big time about what separation of church and state really is.
Yeah, and we are here 20 years out of having declared independence and become a
Hmm.
nation. We are 20 years out. We're talking about the foundation historical documents. We have covered the foundation historical documents. We have covered the documents at which the Supreme Court itself sees good enough to establish laws and interpret them for today's day and age. We have covered them, and we're going to go ahead and stop here. We're not going to go all the way through. We're not going to catch up all the way to 2023. We're going to stop here because we have seen enough of the foundational documents to make the decision, what does this mean? Because we don't need to start talking about people's opinions, what they might think,
Hmm.
because at this point, all that has been said or could be said has been said, and it is done in like Revelation. We're closing the canon here because this is the amount of material that is required to settle the score. And after this,
Mm.
we're gonna is essentially people introducing their opinions. But we see right here, we have a very clear idea that has been set in stone by our founding fathers and those who essentially set up the foundation for us. Now we are at an hour and 8 minutes, and we're going to have to close it here. This next portion is going to be finally our answer, and we're even going to be using some modern day examples. But like I said, we didn't want to go from, you know, Acts all the way up to 2023 and just cover every single primary document. We'd have an entire a couple courses actually.
Yeah.
uh, but I think we have the solid amount of evidence to really show that. And so we're going to close this part up here. And if you'll join us in the final part, in which we go ahead and answer the question, and we'll recommend you some resources and everything will be tied nicely into a bow. So we look forward to seeing you in the last and final part of this episode on essentially what does separation in church and state mean. So we'll catch you very soon. Bye.